Hello, in today's presentation we're going to be looking at professionalism and what it means to be a professional. In particular, we'll be looking at the profession of human resources and specifically at the British context. So looking at what that means in terms of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development as the professional body for HR in the UK. So we start off by thinking, what is a profession? How might we define it? What might we look at? So generally speaking, professionalism is thought to be built round about professional or expert knowledge. That generally speaking, someone who is a professional will have higher level qualifications. So university, postgraduate level qualifications, perhaps a specialist professional qualification endorsed or run by a professional body. They, generally speaking, will be expected to think for themselves, to analyse situations and to make judgments and make decisions. With some of the more traditional professions, you would normally be expected to be a part of a professional body, and not being a member might prohibit you from practicing. So something like the Law Society, being a doctor, you have to be part of the General Medical Council. So some professions you have to be licensed, and it would be a criminal offence to practice without that licence. And that leads on to a bit of a debate around professions such as HR and other professions where you don't require by law to be a member of the professional body, but professions such as HR, you do have professional bodies, the CIPD in the UK, there's a professional body in America, there's a professional body in Australia, for example. So there are professional bodies which exist for other unlicensed professions, if you like, but to get a job in that profession without being a member of CIPD, for example, is becoming increasingly difficult. And if you look at job adverts, the majority of the time they will look for CIPD membership. So there is a debate as to, because you don't require to be a member of CIPD, it's not a legal requirement, that there is a debate as to whether or not that makes it a profession. All professional bodies will have a code of practice, a code of professional conduct, a code of ethics that dictates how the members should be behaving. And during that as well, it will also dictate what should happen if they breach those codes of practice or codes of ethics, and that can include being struck off. We talk about that when we're talking about lawyers or doctors, that they can be disbarred or they can be banned from practicing. And equally with HR, you would not be a member of CIPD anymore, or your professional body if it's a different professional body. But it's not against the law to practice HR without that membership. So people could, in theory, still practice, but as I said previously, if you require to be a member of CIPD to actually secure a job in today's job market, it's going to be more difficult for someone to get a job if they don't have that. Professionally qualified, I've already talked about. And the final thing that I think across all professional bodies, which is really, really important, is the idea of continuous professional development. So not only do you possess expert and professional knowledge, but you are expected to maintain that and ensure that it's kept up to date, and you will be undergoing or participating in development and training opportunities throughout the year as part of your professional development. Different professional bodies will determine what that looks like. So some professional bodies will require a certain number of formal professional development, so training courses, attending seminars, things like that that are documented, that you can get a certificate either to say you've passed a course or that you've attended a course. They will require you to undertake a certain amount of development that is recorded, and you would send your evidence to the professional body every year as part of your membership criteria. With CIPD, for example, it's slightly different, and it accepts that there are also informal learning which can occur, that we can pick up a newspaper or a magazine, or watch something on the internet or on television and learn something from it, and something we can take away and apply back in the workplace. So CIPD recognises that our learning doesn't just come from the formal route, but it can also come from the informal experiences that we have, even just through sitting and doing something at work and reflecting on it and adapting how you practice what you're doing. All of that can be considered as learning, and from CIPD's perspective, you can put that down into your CPD plans, and you would then have a record of formal and informal learning that you've achieved throughout the year. CIPD does not have a specific amount of learning that you have to have undertaken or development that you have to have done, but what they do require is it for a period of a year, you keep your development record of what you've done over the past year, with some reflection on what you've got out of it, what you've learned, how you might apply it, how you might do things differently. But also you should be keeping a plan of what you're going to achieve, what your targets are for the next year. And what they can do as well, and what they do is, rather than having all members submit all their CPD every year, they will pick a random sample from the membership every year. So you just don't know whether they're going to contact you or not to request that paperwork. And equally, I've known of someone previously that received a request for that paperwork for 4 years running. So it's random, but it can also end up being that you get picked more than once as well. In terms of individuals, we tend to think of professions as the professional body and what's required to be an HR professional, thinking about the HR profession as a whole. But if we think about professionalism and apply it to an individual, we can also think about it just in terms of how that person does their job. Do they do it to a professional standard? So we're talking about doing something to a high standard. We expect better quality, we expect more attention to detail, we expect them to behave ethically. So a lot of the individual professionalism is about attitudes of the person carrying out the job, and the behaviours that they demonstrate as well. So if we think about profession, when we attach it to a person, we tend to attach more subjective criteria, thinking about how we expect them to behave. And we talk about someone doing a professional job. Yes, it can apply to people within the professions, but it can also apply to anybody. So, if you've got someone coming in to do painting and decorating for you, say for example, you might ask your friends about someone that did a professional job, someone that took attention to detail, takes a pride in their work, good finish, good quality to the work that they've undertaken. So you'll be thinking about how they conducted themselves, how they actually approached the job, and what effort they put into it to determine whether or not what they did was to a professional standard. So be aware of those two slightly different definitions. But what we're going on to look at now is thinking about, as an HR professional, what might we be looking for? What would we classify as doing a professional job? Okay, so In terms of the HR professional, you're going to be working with people at all different levels, and that's what these 4 concentric circles of HR talk about. So you've got to start off by thinking about, how do you manage yourself? How do you make sure that what you're doing is professional, managing your time, managing your workload, prioritising, so that you know that you're doing a good job. And then once you've got that sorted out, you can think about how you manage other people. If you're working in a team, how do you interact with the others in the team? How do you manage those relationships? If you're managing the team, how do you do that? How do you get the team on board? How do you get them to buy into what you want to do? How do you encourage and inspire them? Then we think about managing upwards. And fairly often, HR wants to influence what happens at board level, but may not always have a voice there. So managing upwards can mean that you're actually looking at, how do you manage the senior management? How do you persuade them that HR has a voice that should be taken seriously, that should be listened to? How do you get them to take on board your opinions and your counsel? So you're maybe thinking about persuasion skills, influencing skills. So you've got to be credible. You've got to come across as really knowing what you're talking about, being able to provide convincing arguments. And in managing across the organisation, you're probably thinking about the relationships that you have with line managers. So you've got no direct authority over the line managers. In some situations, the line managers may be more senior to the HR advisor that's working with them, for example. But you have to have enough credibility. They have to be able to trust you, but you've got to be assertive enough to actually say to them, I know that you really want to sack this person, but that's not the best approach, and here's why. So you have to be able to persuade the managers that you are acting in their best interests, that you're acting in the interests of the company, and you have to be able to get them to listen to you. So a lot of this management is actually about building relationships, about developing relationships, so that the managers know you and they can trust you, and they will come to you when they've got problems. And if you say to them that something's not practical or not feasible or just not a bad idea, that they will actually listen to you and take what you're saying on board. So moving from those sort of general ideas to thinking about CIPD as a professional body, and as I said, all professional bodies will have their own idea of what professionalism looks like within that profession. So obviously with CIPD, we're looking at what their concept of professionalism is within the UK, although they are trying to operate internationally. So this is being spread out across other countries where CIPD also has a presence. In 2018, CIPD updated their professional framework, the professional standards that they use to establish membership criteria, criteria to upgrade, moving from one level of membership to another, and also to fit in with their qualifications to make sure that they're fit for purpose and reflecting what's required by today's companies. So what they did was they went out and spoke to various companies of different sizes to find out, what do they actually think HR should be doing, what do they want from the HR staff within their departments. And these ideas I'm going to put forward now are all built on the input from other HR professionals and also from companies, from management. So non-HR people as well, the senior management team are saying this is what we need our HR people to do. So this is all built round about that. Key themes that are coming through from the new framework are much more focus on understanding the business. So being business savvy would be understanding the business, and much more strongly the idea of ethical behaviour is coming through. So that concept of understanding ethics, understanding why it's important, and HR are constantly under pressure to behave ethically, and you have to make a lot of ethical choices. A lot of the time you're in situations where you're trying to balance what the business wants and what you know is appropriate ethical behaviours or ethical practice, and you're constantly fighting with those conflicts. So putting ethics much more into the framework has become much more present. As well as those, so actually looks as though I've started at the bottom of the slide instead of the top, but they're the kind of new things that are coming through much more strongly. But always CIPD have been, and it fits back in with the stuff in the original slides about a professional has to be able to think for themselves, have to be able to look at situations, analyse all the information and make informed decisions. So the thinking practitioner is someone who's not just going to take, this is what we do, this is what we've always done, that's what we're doing, no questions asked. They're more likely to go away and think about it and come back with, yes, this still works, or, well, I've looked at it and it works, but if you did this and added to it, it could be improved, it could be made better. So the thinking practitioner is going to question what's going on, they're going to look at information, they're going to review it, they will keep up to date with current practice, so they'll be able to think about what's happening and consider whether current practice can be improved upon. And that links in with the professional responsibilities of making sure that you are doing your HR job properly and professionally and to a professional standard, delivering the HR service that the company needs. So, discussed already that CIPD sets up its professionalism built around about these four things. So there is a code of practice and a code of ethics that determines how we should be behaving, what we should be doing, and any complaints that are made to CIPD about any particular HR practitioner would be measured against these codes. On top of that, they have the framework of professionalism, which is the profession map, and the professional standards are all laid out as part of that, and you can assess where you are on the map by looking at the different bandings, and the bandings will represent the different levels. So foundation level or associate level as it is currently, although it will be changing. Associate level would be your office administrator, HR administrator, HR assistant, possibly HR advisor. But as I say, they're changing to allow band 1 might be your office HR administrator, band 2 might be your HR officer, HR advisor, band 3 is more like a chartered member, so HR manager, HR business partner, and band 4 would be your HR directors. So professional standards, there will be standards written for each of the different levels, and at the different levels it will determine what knowledge you would be expected to have and what behaviours you're expected to exhibit working at that particular level. And linking that in with membership, you would have to demonstrate to CIPD if you apply for membership that you meet the criteria for each of these different levels. So currently entry to membership is based on looking at the knowledge that you possess the skills that you have and the behaviours that you demonstrate. And the knowledge can come from the qualifications, but the skills and the behaviours are evidenced through your CPD paperwork that we were talking about earlier, but it would also link in with it's almost like a job application that you're putting in competency examples of how you demonstrate a particular behaviour or a particular skill, and you're also having to get like a testimonial from someone saying, like your manager saying, yes, I have seen Brenda demonstrate the courage to challenge that she will challenge, and in this situation here's what happened. So they're not just taking your word for it, it has to be backed up with evidence from a manager or something like that. The other way they control entry into membership is because they set the qualifications, they set the standards with the qualifications. So membership is then also linked to the qualifications, but at the postgraduate level, you would still have to apply for chartered member or chartered fellow. So you would still have to show that you may have the knowledge from the qualification, but you still have to show that you are actually working at that level to get upgraded from associate member to chartered member. And I think I've talked through all of that already. Just a few things that this is CIPD's policy and what they expect from their members. And I think we've discussed all of this already. So you're expected to maintain your professional knowledge and competence, so keeping your skills and knowledge up to date. Seek support or help if there's an area that you're not so sure of, that you will identify where your gaps are and you will take steps to fill those gaps, whether it's bringing someone in or whether it's gaining the appropriate knowledge and experience and skills. Ensure that you're providing a service which is up to date and insightful. So again, thinking back to the thinking practitioner. And then upon request, providing evidence of compliance with CPD policy. So exactly as I said, they pick a random selection every year and say, send us your CPD, and they would give you a timescale within which to do that. As I said, if you're applying for upgrading, you have to submit it as part of your upgrading. If you're doing CIPD courses, you'll have to submit it as part of your coursework. And for me personally, working as a lecturer delivering on CIPD courses, this is something we have to do, make it available every year when we are audited by CIPD. A little bit now about the map itself, but I am going to make a separate video taking you through that, showing you where different bits are on the CIPD's website. But the map itself, as I said, it's been developed from the 2013 map, but it's meant to be more intuitive. It's meant to be much more about what you're actually doing in the workplace, rather than sort of a list of criteria that you've got to tick boxes. It's trying to be a bit more intuitive and reflect what's actually happening in the workplace. So it's meant to work across different types of business contexts and allow you as HR practitioners to show business how you add value to the company. So it's also about making sure that you're letting business know what you're doing and how you're contributing, what you're adding for them. It's meant to reflect the full breadth of the people profession, so it's widened out, covering more different areas, and hopefully will encourage more people to become HR practitioners, and as the final part says as well, to have the people at the heart of HR professions. So we're not losing sight of the people that we're trying to, human resources is about managing people, and some of the new qualifications are actually changed it from HR to people management. So, they're obviously trying to refocus that, because sometimes human resources can be seen as being negative because it's not using the word and it's just saying people as a resource. So it's trying to make it more personal again. Okay, and then I have a link at the end of my slides that will take you to the profession map as well. But as I said, I'm going to do a separate video which will explain the profession map to you. But I hope this video has given you a basic feel for professionalism and some of the debates that are tied up with that, but also some insight into what it means to be an HR professional as well.